I stand before you to officially launch my campaign for a second term as President of the United States.
It's official. Donald Trump is running for a second four-year term. The U.S. president rallying his supporters in the key swing state Florida with chants of fake news and build the wall. In the UK's leadership race, Boris Johnson remains on top. He faced off with his four adversaries in a televised debate ahead of another elimination vote on Wednesday. And the ex-president of UEFA is released from police custody in Paris. Michel Platini was questioned in a corruption investigation into the vote that saw the 2022 World Cup awarded to Qatar. Hello and welcome back to the France 24 newsroom. It's good to have you with us. We begin in Orlando, Florida, where Donald Trump has formally launched his 2020 re-election campaign. Speaking before some 20,000 supporters, the U.S. president hit on all of his favorite topics, railing against the Russia investigation, the media, and immigration. He also touted his record of appointing conservative judges to the U.S. Supreme Court. Let's take a listen now to a short excerpt from his speech.
Our economy is the envy of the world. Perhaps the greatest economy we've had in the history of our country. And as long as you keep this team in place, we have a tremendous way to go. Our future has never, ever looked brighter or sharper.
The U.S. president will be looking to repeat his electoral surprise of 2016. Earlier, I spoke to our White House correspondent, Philip Crowther, who is at that rally in Orlando. I asked him just how likely another Trump victory is.
Well, we'll have a look at the polls again. Of course, in 2016, many of the polls were wrong, and many of us were wrong, many experts were wrong as well. But recent polls do suggest that Donald Trump might have a bit of a difficult time on his hands to beat, for example, the potential Democratic opponent of President Trump. That would be Joe Biden, the former vice president. There is internal polling from the Trump campaign that shows that Donald Trump would lose to Joe Biden in a lot of the key swing states that Donald Trump won in 2016. There are other polls that don't look good for the president either, but he tends to criticize them as being fake. He doesn't believe them, and he at least is putting on a show of a confident president who believes that he can win re-election in 2020, not necessarily easily, but he does believe that he will get another 4 years in the White House.
France 24's Philip Crowther speaking there. Now, before Donald Trump headed off to Orlando, he announced that he's withdrawing his pick for U.S. Defense Secretary. Patrick Shanahan had been the acting defense secretary since Jim Mattis resigned in December. He's being replaced by the Secretary of the Army. That shakeup at the Pentagon comes as the U.S. is dealing with rising tension in Iran. The conflict rose another notch last week when Washington accused Tehran of attacking 2 oil tankers in the Gulf of Oman. France 24's Mario Sofos has more now on the reaction in Iran.
Anything but war. This, the desire of many on the streets of Tehran in response to increasing pressure from the United States.
We are concerned about war. I'm personally worried about it, especially since we grew up here during the Iran-Iraq war with the sounds of sirens. We will always be anxious about red alerts and bombs.
For others, though, it's nothing that they're not used to dealing with after decades of international diplomatic tensions.
If it is about deploying troops to the region, they already deployed troops and nothing in particular happened. I don't think anything serious will happen.
What worries some more so are the economic consequences. The ongoing diplomatic crisis comes at a heavy price for Iran.
The people are under tremendous political, cultural and economic pressure. I personally, as someone who's working here, see that the situation is very hard. My suggestion is that Iran should start negotiating. The worst that could happen is leaving the talks. Negotiating is just talking.
After their withdrawal from the Iran nuclear deal, the United States reimposed sanctions. Its aim, key sectors of the Iranian economy, such as oil and banking. Since then, the Iranian currency has hit an all-time low, while the price of essential goods has shot up.
Over in the UK, the race to become the next Prime Minister narrowed further on Tuesday. Boris Johnson once again topped the poll of Conservative MPs, while former Brexit Secretary and arch-Brexiteer Dominic Raab was knocked out. The 5 remaining candidates held a televised debate ahead of another round of voting on Wednesday. Alexander Aucott has the details.
There are now just 5 candidates remaining to take the keys to the most important front door in Great Britain. The flamboyant former Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson leads the pack by a wide margin, although many mistrust him for his long record of false statements and blunders in high office. The others are effectively vying for the runners-up position. His successor as Foreign Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, is seen as a competent minister, as is Michael Gove, although they're both considered unexciting choices. Home Secretary Sajid Javid, the only Muslim in high office, is pitching himself as a man of the people, unlike the old Etonians like Johnson, as well as Rory Stewart, who surprised many by making it this far. The 5 men all took part in a second televised debate, including Johnson, who skipped the first edition. They clashed over their positions on a range of issues, including how to solve the Irish border problem and whether they would be willing to postpone Brexit beyond the current deadline.
We must come out on the 31st of October, because otherwise I'm afraid we face a catastrophic loss of confidence in politics.
If I got to the 31st of October and there was no prospect of a deal that can get us out of the EU, then I would be out. I'd leave without a deal. If there was a prospect, if we were nearly there, then I would take a bit longer.
If we're almost there on October the 30th and we just need an extra couple of days to do it, who could object to taking an extra 24 or 48 hours?
One of the mistakes we've made so far is by having this sort of flexible deadline. If you don't have a deadline, you do not concentrate minds.
If I were lucky enough to be your Prime Minister, I am committed that there would never be no deal.
Across the UK.
The Conservative Party will hold a third vote this Wednesday when the 5 candidates will become 4. A day later, a final vote will bring them down to 2, and one of those will be Prime Minister.
Well, France 24's Bénédicte Paviot has been following the Tory leadership race and that debate. She brings us more now from London.
It was a very subdued Boris Johnson, who is, of course, still the front runner and who increased his lead today, I should say. He got 126 votes as opposed to last week's 114. There will be more ballots tomorrow. If needed, more on Thursday in the morning and in the afternoon. Ultimately, will not be the 313 MPs who will reduce these 5 to 2 candidates, but it will be the 160,000 Conservative Party members who will decide that in a postal vote. And we expect the next Tory leader and person who will become, therefore, the next Prime Minister and succeed Theresa May to be announced in the week starting the 22nd of July. More ballots, more tussles, more blows, more ups and downs. We'll see who makes it into the final 2.
And finally, as the Women's World Cup continues in France, one of football's former top executives has been released from police custody here in Paris. Michel Platini, the former head of UEFA, was questioned as part of a corruption probe into the vote that awarded the 2022 World Cup to Qatar. Platini, who himself is a former football star, has denied wrongdoing. Here's what he had to say after he was released from custody late this evening.
Listen, that was long, but I was asked a number of questions. It should be long, given that they asked me about FIFA, the Euro 2016, the World Cup in Russia, PSG, Qatar, a lot of things. I answered calmly, as my lawyer said. I didn't know why I was there, but I answered well. I've always been calm. I feel completely strange in whatever this scandal is. It's an old scandal, as I explained to you. It keeps going. They make inquiries. They're still searching.
That brings us to the end of this edition, but do stay tuned here on France 24. We'll have more news coming up in just a bit.